Hello, and welcome to Precon Decon, the video series where I deconstruct the pre-constructed decks of Magic the Gathering's history. In this video, we're looking at the last theme deck from Mirrodin, which is Wicked Big, which is a mono-green deck. So let's look at the deck list here. So 25 creatures, 6 sorceries, 5 instant, 24 land, and mana curve off to the side there. So let's start looking at some of these creatures, and I'm going to share my thoughts on green and Mirrodin, because I have a lot to say about green and Mirrodin. So let's look at these cards first, and then I'll explain my feelings on them. So we have 2 brown oof, which is 1 green mana for a 1/1 oof. 1 colors, 1 green, tap, counter target activated ability from an artifact source, which is a I was going to say quite a niche ability, but it actually would have been pretty good. At the time, because obviously there would have been a lot of artifacts with activated abilities, and just kind of preventing them would have been pretty good. Like this would have, stopped equipment going on to something. Would have stopped a lot of artifacts with tap abilities. It affects artifacts and artifact creatures, which I think is pretty good. And also really fun to see counter on a green spell, and it not related to +1/+1 or whatever, which is part of the thing I'm going to say about Green and Mirrodin. But so let's look at the 2 Tel'Jalad creatures here. So we have 2 Tel'Jalad archers, who's is basically giant spider with protection from artifacts, and Tel'Jalad Chosen, who's a 2/1 with protection from artifacts. So this is fine as well. This was kind of like a sub theme of green in that you had a bunch of creatures with protection from artifacts. Green being the anti-artifact color, but again, I'll explain why I don't think that makes sense on Mirrodin. And then Viridian Shaman, 3 mana for a 2/2. When it comes into play, destroy an artifact. Super efficient, well costed. I think that's just a straight up reprint of, or a functional reprint of, what's the old Mirage card? Uktabi Orangutan. It's interesting. Right, so I'm going to go off tangent here, talk about green in Mirrodin. So, every color in Mirrodin block had a specific relationship with artifacts. White was all about equipment. Blue was all about affinity and therefore completely broken. Black had a sort of a semi-sacrifice theme, but also had a lot of cards that got more powerful if you had artifacts. Like there was a whole cycle of Nim creatures that basically get +X/+0, where X is the number of artifacts you control. So the idea was like they fed off the radiation given by artifacts, which is kind of cool. Red had a sacrifice theme, as in sacrifice them to get power toughness boosts or mana or whatever. And green is just let's destroy artifacts, which is fine, I think, normally. For green to be anti-artifact, but it doesn't make sense on Mirrodin because Mirrodin, the whole world is artificial. So really, by destroying artifacts, green is actually the anti-nature color. Really, if you think about it, what I think would have been interesting would be if green's relationship with artifacts in the set had been more to do with maybe like +1/+1 counters and charge counters. I think that would have been an interesting angle to take, and also would be foreshadowing for Fifth Dawn. Which was, a set that cared a lot about +1/+1 counters and charge counters. I just think that's what green should have done in Mirrodin rather than just destroying artifacts. Because as we'll see in this deck, it's not really a lot of artifacts, and like that's the key gimmick of Mirrodin is artifacts. So look, we got 4 Fankrin Hunters, like it was a perfectly fine creature, 5 mana for a 4/4 trample. Yep, that's what it does. 2 Tel'Jalad Exiles, 4 mana for a 2/3, and it regenerates. Yep, okay, fine. 2 Trolls of Tel'Jalad, who are quite expensive at 7 mana, but they're 5/6, which is fairly chunky. And you can pay 2 for them to regenerate any green creature, which is that's actually a pretty good ability in my opinion. And then one of the rares of the deck is Plated Slagworm. So 7 mana with hexproof. I think this one of the first creatures that has hexproof. And it's just 8/8. No other abilities, unfortunately. And I don't. There's a few buff spells actually in here which I think can give it trample. But just 8/8 hexproof, which at the time I think would have been a big deal. It would have been tough to deal with it. So the other rare of the deck is Living Hive, 8 mana, which is again huge. 8 mana for a 6/6 trample. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, you create that many 1/1 green insect tokens, which is fine. I feel by the time you've got 8 mana, you can drop this thing on the board. You maybe don't need a bunch of 1/1s, but it's fine, I guess. A single Slith Predator. This is okay. Just double green for a 1/1 trample, and whenever it deals combat damage to a player, it gets +1/+1 counter. Yep, that's okay. If you can get it to survive a couple of turns and build it up. It being obviously nice and cheap helps there. Two Needle Bugs. It's just a 2/2 with protection from artifacts and flash, which is, yeah, it's fine, I guess. And then a full playset of Coppermers. Just 2 mana for a 1/1, and it taps to add green. So this is like your mana dork, really, and helps you get out these big creatures a lot quicker. So spell-wise, Creeping Mold, 2 of these, so 4 mana as a sorcery to destroy an artifact, enchantment, or land. I like Creeping Mold. It's a little expensive, but like it always has a target, which I think is important. It's like it's never like a dead card in your hand, because if your opponent doesn't have an artifact or enchantment, you can at very least go for their lands. A single Deconstruct. This, I actually really like the design of this. There was only, I think, one other green spell that did this in the set. Turn to Dust, which was a single green, and it could only destroy equipment. But Deconstruct, so it's 3 mana, destroy target artifact, and then you get 3 green into your mana pool. Which I think is that's actually pretty good. It essentially pays for itself. Yeah, I would have actually. This is like a theme I would have liked to see explored a bit more as well. Like have a bit more of this kind of these spells where you get to destroy it and then it essentially pays for itself. I think that would have been kind of a fun thing to do. And then 2 Journey of Discoveries. So 3 mana. Choose one. Search your library for up to 2 basic land cards and put them into your hand, or you can play up to 2 additional lands this turn. So I think both those modes are fine on their own. It has Entwine, which is this mechanic from Mirrodin block, which I really like, actually. I really wish they brought back Entwine in some way. I thought for certain it was going to be used in Strixhaven in some way, but I was disappointed there. But Entwine means you can do both those modes at once. But if you're paying Entwine, you're paying 6 mana, and if you've got access to 6 mana, I don't think you need the 2 extra land. Like you've kind of hit a comfortable point. But yeah, I mean, you've got expensive cards in here, and like, having more land is never a bad thing. But I think either of those modes on their own, like there's not a necessity to entwine this one to get maximum benefit from it. And then we have a single 1 dozen eyes. So 6 mana sorcery creates either a single 5/5 beast or 5 1/1 insects, and you can entwine it for triple green. So you'd have to pay 9 to get everything. But yeah, that's if you pay 9 and get 10 power worth of stuff on the field, that's not awful. I think even paying this at 6 mana to get one of those options again is perfectly fine. And then we have 2 Battle Growth. This is just whatever. It's just very boring and functional. Single green, just put a +1/+1 counter on something. That's what I mean. Like this could have been like Green's theme throughout the Mirrodin block is just like +1/+1 counters. Imagine if this had been like an entwine spell to either like put a +1/+1 counter on a creature or put a charge counter on an artifact, and then it has entwine, and then you're also making green like the entwine color, I suppose. I don't know. Just going off, that's like a huge what could have been. Anyway, and then single Blood Scent. This is like Lure for a turn, which I think I prefer Lure just as a just as a normal enchantment, which is how we normally see it, like just as an aura. But I think this is okay as well. Yeah, the fact that you can drop it instant speed means your opponent doesn't see it coming, I suppose. So it's okay. It's okay. It's a little expensive, I think, but overall it's all right. And then 2 Predator Strike. This I think is actually pretty good. Like 2 mana for +3/+3 and trample and end of turn. I used to like this for a while. I used to run this in decks over Giant Growth just because it gave trample, which is always useful. Always useful to get trample. So yeah, that's basically the deck. So some options I think what could have been here. I think Dragon Blood would have made. You could have made space for Dragon Blood, just to start pumping up creatures. It is expensive, but you're in green, you can afford it. Life Spark Spellbomb. I'm kind of surprised this wasn't in here. Just turn land into a 3/3 creature until end turn. Just get a surprise attacker or surprise blocker. Yeah, it's fine. Copperhoof Vorak. 5 mana for a 2/2 beast. Gets +1/+1 for every untapped permanent your opponents control. That could have been okay, maybe. I think the resin here are fine. I think, Living Hive, I'm a bit iffy on. But I think the plated slag one's right. The thing is, like, well, this is the thing with green in Mirrodin, as I say, like the Mirrodin block is all about artifacts, and like none of the rares really care about artifacts. They're just like generic big creatures. Um, I mean, Troll Aesthetic would have been fine here as well, like 3 mana for 3/2. He's got Hexproof from Regeneration. He's actually one of the better cards, I think, out of the whole Mirrodin block, just because at the time he was very difficult to deal with, and I would say he's probably still difficult to deal with now. Like the fact that he's got a form of untargetability and can also regenerate, and he's like quite aggressively costed at 3. Yeah, Troll Aesthetic's pretty good. Get a Lockstone Warhammer on him, and he was he was a nightmare. So in summary, it's just very boring, isn't it? As a deck, the thing, like, it's perfectly functional. I think as a play experience, you could have picked this up and played, and it's just green fatties, which is fine. But the thing is, in my mind, like these theme decks, they should really be showing off what the set is about. And green has nothing to work with in Mirrodin. Like it's just big creatures. Like this could be from any set. If you obviously, if you change names around, there's nothing here that identifies it as Mirrodin other than you've got like a few cards that are like protection from artifacts. But again, that could be like any set that does that. So overall, like in terms of the deck, perfectly average, middle of the road. But in terms of like, I don't know, as a good product to signpost the set, I think it's pretty bad, honestly. Just because it doesn't do anything really like special or unique. But I say that's really down to how green was designed in Mirrodin. And obviously when we go back to Mirrodin, then it's like become the infect color. So it's even then it's still not about artifacts. But anyway, that was my thoughts on Wicked Big. What were your thoughts? Put them in a comment below. If you had this deck or you played it, or even just what do you think about it? I'd really like to hear. But I'll be back next time. So we're done with Mirrodin. We're gonna carry on next time, and we're gonna start looking at the Dark Steel decks. So yes, until then, thank you for watching and listening, and have a great day.